All right, Nick, let's talk about the Oregon Ducks. Of course, we talked about all this all season, how head coach Dan Lanning has really brought in a lot of great transfers, a lot of great recruits to this 2024 class. We see the 2024 class come in. Everybody looks really good. So that leads us to believe it's time to start getting excited about the 2025 class. We've already hit on a few players in that class, but I don't think anyone was quite as big as who we're going to talk about today. Let's get in the article and we talk more about all of this on the other side. This is from over on Ducks Digest. It says, on Friday, running back Jordon Hill announced his verbal commitment to the Oregon Ducks football program. Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, and Ole Miss were among the schools that had offered the four-star prospect Hill. Hill's the first running back commit of the Oregon's 2025 recruiting class. As a junior at Althoff Catholic High School, Hill earned Illinois' Gatorade Player of the Year. The 6', 180-pound back rushed for 1,788 yards and 28 total touchdowns, 23 rushing touchdowns last season. He is rated the 9th best running back in the nation by 24/7 Sports. All 7 of the 2025 commits are 4-star recruits so far for Oregon, and head coach's Dan Lanning's class ranks as number 16th in the nation. Nick, this guy seems absolutely bananas. 1,788 yards and 28 touchdowns in one season. That's a lot to be excited about. I think Jordon Hill is going to be a great addition to this Oregon offense. I'm curious what your thoughts are so far, but Oregon fans, in the comment section below, we're talking about, we're going ahead a little bit. We're talking about the 2025 class, but let's go back. 2024 class, we saw a lot of new faces at spring ball this offseason. Who impressed you the most out of training camp, spring ball, spring game, all of those things combined? Who is the new face on this Oregon team that you're really starting to get excited about? Let us know in the comment section below. But Nick, what are your thoughts on this latest recruit to the 2025 class?
I think it's a great move by Dan Lanning and company as an entire Oregon staff. And the reality is, transferring into the Big Ten, there was going to be a big question mark was, could Oregon go into Big Ten country and beat Ohio State and beat Michigan, programs like those, in the recruiting game for the top prospects? And a lot of people felt like, no, that's not going to happen. Oregon will have the success nationally. They'll still do their thing on their West Coast. But the Midwest, Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, right, that's still going to be Ohio State country. Well, not anymore. Oregon has made a huge statement here, sending a message, beating out Ohio State. Ohio State was aggressively pursuing Hill, obviously from Illinois. It's a Midwest country, right? Big-time prospect. It just screams a kid who's going to play at Ohio State, maybe at Michigan, right? Classically, that's who he would commit to. Oregon comes into the fold, West Coast, Eugene, right? New to the Big Ten. Hey, you're not really going to win these recruiting battles, right? You may show up and put forth a good effort, but, I'm sure Ohio State was like, yeah, you guys stick to the West Coast. We'll handle these guys. Well, Dan Lanning wasn't having any of that. He took this kid from Ohio State, and I think it's a credit to his recruiting ability, and obviously I think the sales job that his assistant coaches are able to do. But let's be totally honest here. It's also a credit to the talent level and success and believed success that Oregon will have in the future. Because while past success really helps you bring in the recruits, and that has a big role into it, right? If you win 12 games the previous year, a lot of good players are going to want to play with you, recruiting-wise going forward. But the reality is recruits have to believe you're going to be as good or better in the future as well. And recruits and their coaches, they're not dumb. They can look at your team and sit there and say, hey, last year you were good, but you just lost Bo Nix. Right? How good are you going to be in the future, right? A lot of question marks. The fact that these recruits are able to listen to Lanning and the coaching staff and see the other moves Oregon has made. We talk about it all the time. Good recruiting, good transfer portal additions beget better recruiting. These recruits see that and they say, okay, last year wasn't a flash in the pan. In fact, last year, maybe they underperformed a little bit. This coming season, they'll probably be even better. And that's how you get recruits like Hill in this instant here. That's how you go into Big Ten country and beat Ryan Day and Ohio State. And if Oregon is able to do this consistently, which I think they certainly could, they're not going to be a contender in the Big Ten. They're going to be a favorite in the Big Ten, and it starts with recruiting moves just like these.
Yeah, Nick, I think this guy is phenomenal. I like you talk about, the talent at Oregon, how that kind of attracts players. And we think about what just happened. We saw Bucky Irving, Oregon's former running back, go into the draft, the 4th round to the Buccaneers. And he's a guy that, was on that draft board, and he wasn't necessarily at the top, but he still got picked up in the 4th round pretty early on in the draft. So I think for a guy like Hill, seeing Oregon sending running backs to the NFL, That's got to be important for why he wants to be there as well. So I think that probably has a small part to play in it. Just showing that Oregon can produce and put out talent at other places than defense and quarterback. Because those are things we know Oregon for. Oregon always puts a lot of defensive players into the draft. And on top of that, they do a great job at producing quarterbacks that go to the draft as well. Running backs, there's been a couple throughout history that have been pretty good, but lately we see Bucky Irving be the next guy in that roster, and Jordon Hill has to be like, well, I want to do that too. If they can do that with him, I could be just as good, if not better. I'm really excited about this guy. He seems like a heck of an athlete, a great prospect for Oregon. I think he's a guy that's going to come in, not next season, but the season after, and really put up a lot of great numbers for Oregon. He seems like a very positive recruiting trend for the Ducks. I'm excited to see what kind of players he himself will be able to bring in for the school.